I'm interested in the push that they're saying that there's this bottleneck when it comes to a lot of people staying in hotel accommodation. And then the Taoiseach sort of saying at the weekend, the problem is there's a caution about leaving that hotel accommodation.
Yeah.
So now, I suppose there isn't the same incentive talk about not having food provided to people who are staying in hotels.
Yeah.
Is that what way now the government are tackling this perceived problem?
There's a sense that the offer of support is unequal depending on where you are. So if you're in a hotel and you're essentially your board has been provided for, so all your food and your accommodation is essentially being covered by the state. If you've been moved out into the community, that's not the case. You know what I mean? You're not getting the same level of support. So, and there is a sense, and certainly I was being briefed on this last night, that there is a sense that there are a certain number of people who are in the hotels who have essentially made their network there, or their base there. They have friends now. They have their kids are in local schools. They may be working in the local community. They are reluctant to move
and
elsewhere.
Are the accommodation options available to them outside
Not always, because
of the hotel
it's very ad hoc. Because look at the Killarney situation, whereas you know what I mean. They were being talked about being bussed up to Mayo.
That was about 7 months in, wasn't it? As well,
there was, but you also then had this issue that it was up to local politicians scrambling to find an adequate network of properties. Now they ultimately did that, and that move to Mayo was cancelled. But there are genuine fears that listen, we've already been traumatised once in Ukraine. We're coming over here. We've made a kind of a relatively stable base here, albeit in a hotel, and they're reluctant as to where their next step might be. Now, no one is suggesting that living in a hotel is a permanent solution. That it really isn't. But but clearly, the dots are not being joined up. And certainly there's an awful lot of what I was getting a lot of last night, and it's classic Irish government stuff, is one department blaming another department for the chaos. And I kind of get the sense that Micheál Martin was heading into that meeting tonight to try and put an end to that, because people's tempers are beginning to fray in relation to that.
Yeah, in reference to this, and it points again at the political tensions, I think, that we're seeing, Anatoliy, do you believe that there needs to be a sort of NPHET-type task force here, and a figurehead or somebody who will take up this job and be the go-to person, the spokesperson, take the lead on this?
100%, because we've been asking this of the government for quite some time now. We do feel that needs to be the case, because to quote, I don't know how many people that have spoken here tonight, this is a crisis of epic proportions. We're living through, generational events here. We need somebody to, same as COVID, we need somebody to take charge, to be the point of contact, so that one department isn't blaming each other, because probably it's not anybody's particular fault. It's the fact that they're not probably working together as well as they could be, hypothetically. So there definitely needs to be a person, and it would be a person that we don't necessarily need, daily updates like we had at, during COVID. But, we do need a person that when the Irish public and the Ukrainian refugees will benefit from somebody giving regular updates on what the situation is and what the plan is, more importantly.
Yeah, and we're also hearing about other changes being discussed. The idea, Annie, that benefits would be cut back for people who are arriving here, like the automatic medical card that was given to members of the Ukrainian community. Do you think that that's a reasonable idea in the circumstances, or what's your view on it?
I don't think a reasonable response to people fleeing from a land war at the edge of Europe is to cut medical support to them. I don't think that is I personally don't think that's a reasonable thing. I think we should be giving them every last bit of help that they need, and a medical card is a small, meaningful thing to do. I do think it's important to say, earlier this year, Minister O'Brien wrote to, the political parties, the groupings, political people, asking for us for suggestions on what can be done, and lists of vacant properties in all our localities. And we all, participated, we trotted around and looked at this, that and the other. We've never heard anything back about that. And I think a lot of people, a lot of political groupings and public representatives did something. We never heard anything back from that, whether anything came from it, whether this was a good idea, whether it was a bad idea. And it'd be great to actually hear from the Minister whether any of those suggestions were taken up, because I do think people tried.
It has come up time and time again, I suppose, the lack of an innovative approach when it comes to this, Jim, that yes, we are in extraordinary circumstances, but at the same time, that's really when you have to think about what you can do. And these number of vacant properties, we heard it there at a clip at the top of the show as well, saying really it's not good enough that they are not in use. They have been highlighted. There are buildings, there are institutions that could be reopened.
Yeah, listen,
why is all that taking so long?
We have issues in this country with vacant properties, and that needs to be examined and resolved, not just for Ukrainian people, but just in general. It's inappropriate that we have properties that are vacant. But just going to say, in terms of the medical card, like the government has given out 43,000 medical cards And, you know, I recommend that and I want it to stay there. And I don't think anyone should seek to take it away. But it is an illustration of the generosity and the positive response of the government. We have had a crisis in the accommodation.
Do you think they should be
No,
curtailed?
I don't think they should be curtailed, and I think we need to give support to people. But the good news as well is that there are 10,000 of the Ukrainians have arrived who are working. So the important thing is that they get integrated into our community, that they work, that they'll be able to afford for their own accommodation. Then that's the way to resolve this.
Can I go back to the vacant buildings?
Yeah.
What is the issue there? Because we're hearing some, you know, tens of thousands of vacant properties that could be put in use. The modular homes, I don't think, are going to come on stream now till, well, God knows when. But
I don't know the reason for the delay in it, but I do know that the government, since it's an emergency response, like we're in a situation now where 1 in 4 hotel rooms in the country is being used for the benefit of refugees. So like we haven't gone down the route of examining more appropriately the vacant properties that are available.
Would you agree that
I think we need to. I'm no doubt
Yeah.
Darragh O'Brien is doing that. But like, can I just emphasise something here? There's no easy solution to this. It's a crisis, and it's not a unique crisis in Ireland. Every other European country is facing the same issue that we're facing here. And some of them are facing them in a much worse condition than we are.
Claire, just very quickly, we hear about these vacant units. You walk through Dublin city centre, there are flats that have been boarded up, not for a week or 2 weeks, but for years. In a stone's throw from O'Connell Street, a stone's throw from Grafton Street. That's unforgivable. Not only where we find ourselves in terms of the Ukraine crisis, but in terms of our housing crisis. Jim, you're a former Dublin City Council member. Like, I mean, why does this allow...
I don't know. It's been an issue there even before the housing crisis that we allow vacant properties to remain there and not to be used, and not to force the owners of the property to do something with the property so they can be put back into use. But listen, that is a longer term issue as well and has to be dealt with. But in terms of Ukrainians who are in the country and providing...
Is it a longer term issue? I mean, these are buildings that if you took the hoarding off them and did a bit of work on them, it needn't take that long.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had this, you know, we've had war breaking out 8 months, as you say, and a lot could have been done in that 8 months.
We need to ensure that there are no vacant properties around, but it is going to take time to do that. And I think we probably need more legislative pressure put on the owners to ensure that they're forced to put their properties back into use.
But these are Dublin City Council units. Like, a lot of these are Dublin City Council units. Like.
I know that you're talking about the voids in Dublin City Council. Some of them, do remain unused and vacant for periods of time. And what happens is when the Dublin City Council tenant moves on or dies, the council won't allow somebody into it until such time as they've refurbished the place. And that can take up to a year, unfortunately.
Emma, are you hoping something positive will come out of all of this? And
there always has to be out of a crisis something positive, right? Whether it's for releasing housing for our own people or for the Ukraine. And I really am hoping that the Taoiseach's meeting today is a reset, right? And because we really need new energy. And it's not even, we kind of know what the solutions, we've talked about the solutions. What we need is the urgency. We need a plan, and we do need a medium plan. Actually, 90% hotel accommodation is not a plan, right? That's a fallback scenario. We need to be doing parallel strategy, which is addressing vacancy, it's encouraging rent to room, all those things we've discussed. But that needs to be driven. And it's unfair to leave that burden on the Department of Children.